we have 11 people here. Thank you so much, everybody. And so the reason that I decided to do this is because I'm always saying that I'm going to do like a moving to Mexico series. And I think I've been saying that for about, I don't know, a year and a half, and I just haven't gotten around to it. And a lot of people write to me, and I'm sure Abby, asking us questions about moving to Mexico. How do we do it? And so I figured the best thing is to just do this, and then I can post it to YouTube and have everybody's most commonly asked questions there. And then people could comment under the YouTube or whatever. But I figured to just make my life easier. I also had gone into my inbox messenger requests and had like 5 or so things that I just never answered. So, you know, my bad. But so I think we pretty much get asked the same questions. So I know a lot of you know me, Tania, from the UK, moved to the US, and now I live in Oaxaca. I lived briefly in Merida, but I didn't like it, and it was during the pandemic. So I don't think that my answers on Merida are particularly valid because it's quite a long time ago, and obviously a different world back then. And then Abby lives in San Miguel de Allende. We have both been in the like single mom by choice community. Like I remember Abby's pregnancies before I even had children. I was trying to conceive. And so we finally got to meet when I moved to Mexico. And she was also some of my inspiration for moving, because I remember when she was thinking about moving to Mexico and she was like, I'm just going to go for a year. And then after a year, she was like, oh no, I'm staying longer. And now we're like 7 years later and she's still here. And I moved here about a year and a half or so after Abby. But it's definitely like seeing somebody do it with 2 kids as well, and like how much she thrived. And as somebody who'd maybe like just dipped a toe in and then leapt, I was like, oh, I could do that. So it's really cool to have Abby here to talk about her experiences in Mexico too, and another part of the country that's great and that people really love living. So how I decided, I'm just going to sort of answer like in general. Like I have obviously lived in a few different countries. I also lived in Australia and Spain in my life. And then when I had children, I decided I didn't want to raise them in the US. And so I came to Mexico because I had seen Abby, and I had other friends who had really like enjoyed it here. And so I decided to just come for a couple of weeks when my son was a baby and I was about to try to conceive my daughter. And after the 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, we could do this. And if this next cycle works, then I'll wait until after this child is born. And if it doesn't, then let's move tomorrow. Obviously, I had another child, so I moved when she was 4 months old, which was, you know, no small feat because we were 4 generations moving together. Yeah, my grandfather came, my mom, me, and the kids, and also a couple of dogs. So it was a challenge, and I know that's also one of the questions. So I decided on Mexico because it was, and things may have changed, but it was very easy to move to Mexico. You just had to prove for 6 months that you earned a certain amount of money. And then you had to go to the consulate, fill out some paperwork. And I was told to say that the reason I wanted to move was for better quality of life, that they loved that. And it was true. They like really laughed and high-fived when they read my part of the application. And I was in and out of there within an hour or so. I think I did the paperwork, left, had a coffee, came back, and they gave me my passport with the stamp in it. And I was pregnant. And I was so worried about being pregnant because I thought they were going to be like, well, so what are you going to do about that? But they didn't. They were like, oh, yeah, that's fine. You can add the baby later, or, you know, they were just super chill about it. So for me, it was very easy. I think that it's the same process, but I know that it's a little bit harder now in terms of, obviously, there's a lot more people trying to move, but the requirements are higher too. I think back then it was like $1,600 a month was all you had to prove, whereas now I think it's $4,000 or something, somewhere around there. So specifically, how did I land on Oaxaca? I didn't. I landed on Merida because I knew a lot of people there and it was a really soft landing. I knew somebody that could help me at the consulate. I knew somebody who already lived there that could help me with housing. So, but I didn't love it, and the pandemic really crippled Merida, and it was so strict. And so I got in my car one day and I said to my mom, I'll be back when I have found a place to live. And when I got to Oaxaca, I didn't go any further. I'd actually planned to go up as far as San Miguel, but I didn't. I just turned back and got everybody and came back. So that's how I ended in Oaxaca, and I've been here ever since. Some of the questions that I've been asked is it easy to build community and make friends? And yes, for me, it's been super easy, but I also think that just depends how much you want to put yourself out there. But I do think that having children is a really easy way to build community, because your kids invariably will go to schools and then you'll meet other parents. And because I put my children in like Montessori's and Waldorfs, the parents are a bit more interactive with the schools than sometimes a public school will be, where people just drop off at the gate and it's so much bigger. Like our schools are really small with maybe like, I don't know. And one of the schools had like 38 kids total. And then the new one has probably about 50. So it's not a lot of children. So you get to know the parents and they organize a lot of activities. So that's one of the main ways I've built community. But also there's lots of things, like I go to a philosophy group in Oaxaca to try and meet non-parents. I'll go, I always say I'm going to try and go to pickleball, but there's like so many different avenues which you can extend yourself into when you are an immigrant or in somewhere, a new person in a new place, that you can find like-minded people. And I feel like Oaxaca has so many levels, from hiking clubs to, and it's always mixed. Like I've met so many most of my friends are Mexican, or at least married to a Mexican. Oh, Miguel is here. And so, yeah, it's not been a hard thing to do for me to find community. So someone has asked which cities have the most SMC, and I would actually probably say maybe Merida. I don't know if they're SMCs, but they have a huge single mom community in Merida. And then I think that you probably are next, right? San Miguel has quite a few. And then Oaxaca, there's not really any, but there's plenty. There's still just plenty of community. And obviously with what I do for a living, I meet SMCs all the time, and I've met some of you. So for me, it's not too I don't really worry about it. But also my secret plan has always been that some of you move down here and build an SMC community with me. So somebody has asked if it's possible to move with pets, and yes, we moved with 2. One has since passed away, and right now I have 5 dogs. So if you don't have any dogs, you might well end up with them, because it's really I have a bleeding heart for animals, and so I'm fostering 2 dogs right now. We found a dog in the street and we replaced my mum's dog that died, and I still have my baby right behind me. So yeah, no problem moving with dogs. It's actually quite easy, but the regulations change all the time. So much so that the day that we went in for the big expensive test, when they went to pull up the information, it had changed that very day, and we didn't have to have that test anymore. So, everything changes a lot when it comes to moving your pets. So just make sure you go to there's a website for it. So have there been weird reactions to being a single mom by choice here? And no, Oaxaca is a super progressive part of Mexico. It's like the second place in Mexico to legalize same-sex marriage. Abortion is legal. They have recognized a third gender forever, right? The bouchers.
Yes.
So it's a very progressive place, and I'm sure that within families that those maybe ideals don't exist. And obviously, if I'm in a taxi and I'm coming home from Central at night and they ask where my husband is, I say, oh, at home. But in my day-to-day activities, and all of my friends know, and everybody, like, nobody bats an eyelid whether they're Mexican or wherever. Bali was a different story, but I'll save that for another day. So housing costs, people ask about housing. You can, I'm helping a friend right now. You can find a place for 8,000 pesos, which is right now about $470, $80. It's more than it was. I just was helping my friend. I found a 2-bedroom for that price. You can find stuff cheaper. You can find stuff for $3,000, $4,000 if you want. So it's all across the scale, and that the houses that are cheap aren't bad, but they might not have gardens. They might not have some of the things that you need, but you can find houses super reasonably here. Let's see, schools. So there's plenty of public schools. My kids are in Montessori, and they've been in Waldorf, and the range of pricing, obviously, for a Waldorf is maybe $200 to $400 a month, as opposed to what you would pay in other parts of the world. I think that's about what Papalotes is now.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, our kids went to school together, but my kids are now in a different one. So yeah, there's obviously, and the schools are great, and because they're not like super out of reach for regular people here, so you still, like, most of my kids have got Mexican friends. Like, it's not like a closed immigrant population. It's mixed all across the board, which I love, because that meant my kids learned Spanish really quickly. So budget is, as big or as small as you want it to be. I do all of my shopping in the Abastos market for my produce because it's the freshest. It's also the cheapest, but and I like to connect with locals. So for me, I can live super cheaply by getting all of my produce at the market. But you can also go to Walmart or Chedraui and spend not that much less than you would spend at home if you want to live like that too, right? So budget is literally a piece of string. Like how long is a piece of string? It's really as cheap or as much as you want it to be. How much language do you need? I came speaking a good amount of Spanish, like survival Spanish, and my grammar is still pretty terrible, but I can hold conversations. I think how much you need, it's like, I think you can get away with probably really basic Spanish now that Google Translate exists. But I have, since I moved here, made an effort to, as soon as I leave the house, to speak Spanish, so that I force myself to speak. So it's hard for me to know whether people really speak English because I've never tried to live my life. Okay, yep, what were you going to say? Yvette, was it? Hang on, no, Anna, did I just lose you? Did you have a question? Oh, I'll just finish up and then we'll do questions at the end. That'll probably be easier. So health insurance or finding primary care doctors. Healthcare is so easy in Mexico, or at least in Oaxaca. My kid has been in hospital for 5 days and we had the best care. Like, I can't imagine receiving better care anywhere else in the world. Like, she had so many specialists that she was just so well taken care of. And I had a major surgery here. I had endometriosis and I had a hysterectomy, and Abby's had surgery. We've all had surgery here. And I have to say that the level of care, although the recovery is hard because they don't give you as many as strong drugs, but the level of care whilst you're there is second to none. And when I have guests, we've had a rolled ankle at the casa, and they've been into the emergency with an X-ray and out in under an hour. So the healthcare here is really good. It's the Hospital San Lucas is the one that we use. But even say if you come here and your kid just has a persistent cough, you can just go to a walk-in pharmacy and there's a doctor, and then you can give them 50 pesos and they'll give you, oh yeah, this is what's wrong, and then take this cough syrup. So medical care is easily accessible. I have emergency insurance for the whole family for if we get in a car accident or God forbid I get cancer or something, and that's $2,200 a year for the three of us. So what to do with your house, pension, insurance, and everything in the US? I never had a pension, so I don't know. I have insurance here, and we sold. My mom sold her house. We were ready to cut the cord completely from the get-go. So it just depends how much you want to give up. We put stuff in storage, and then after 2 years, I went and got it, and I shipped it all down. And I can share that information. They were amazing, the people that helped me. Quality of life, but as in potable water, internet, power outages. We really very rarely have power outages here. There has to be a really big storm. Obviously, we don't have snow here, so that we don't. It's really unusual to get a power outage here. The internet, pretty good. So I haven't had major problems with internet. And then the water, we don't drink from the tap water, and water is a scarcity in Oaxaca, so you treat it with care. But I just go and have the big 5-gallon bottles filled up, and we use that for all of our cooking and everything. But I brush my teeth in the tap, just using the tap, and that's fine. And then what do we do for work? Well, I host retreats, mainly with Single Moms by Choice, but I've got more just regularly single, and actually a 2-parent family, cisgender couple signed up with me today for July. That's what I do. And then I'm going to hand it over to Abby, because some of the answers will be a little different for up in San Miguel, and she can tell you what she does.
All right. Thanks, Tania. I'm Abby. I was working as a pediatric nurse practitioner until I moved down here, and then I became a child sleep coach and a parent coach. So related to what I did before, but not the same. Let's see why I moved. So I had 2 kids. I was living in Brooklyn, New York, and commuting and childcare and just the cost of living and the pace of life was exhausting. I was just completely burnt out, and I felt like I was so there for everybody else's kids that when I came home, I didn't have anything left for my own. So as much as I love New York and my community there, I had a friend who I met through the SMC forum back when it was Yahoo groups. I don't know if any of you were around.
Mm-hmm. It was easy for me.
And my friend and I went out last night. Spoiler alert. We figured out we've been friends online through the Yahoo groups for 16 years. And we had always talked about immersion travel and being interested in that. So we came here for the first time when my youngest was 2, hers was 3. And we had a great time. It was fun, like meeting, after so many years of being online friends. Went back to our regular lives. I had summers off, so I had always thought about, coming for summers, but the nature of my work was very political in terms of funding. And just one day I was just done. And I said, you know what, Ducky, I'm moving. And a month later, she decided to move as well, which was really, really fun, just to have a safety net a little bit, because we didn't know anyone down here. So that was how she had researched all different places that Americans tend to move if they leave the United States. So Mexico, Panama, Uruguay, and within Mexico, she had looked at Merida as well. But she said San Miguel was really good because it's closer to the U.S. than, say, Oaxaca, a bit easier to get back. Similar time zone to the United States, which was important for both of us because we were working online. Like logistically, like roads are good here. Seems pretty safe. There's a big American and Canadian population, so it felt like, as Tania mentioned, a soft landing of like, as opposed to moving someplace where it's all 100% Mexican. It can be hard to get integrated into the community. So having people that we could connect with was really reassuring. And I didn't know if we would be here for long or not, because for me, coming from an urban environment in the Northeast US to semi-desert was a huge shock to the system. I really love green trees and hiking, and it's hot here in the springtime, especially. The rest of the year is lovely. So that was how basically I came here because Jackie researched it, and we always laugh about that. But she just tells me what we're doing, and I'm like, okay, great. The consulate experience is a little bit more challenging for me. So one thing to know is like every consulate is different. So some people, even if they live near one, will fly to a different one because they've heard that it is easier. So New York was more challenging. I had to go 3 different times. They wanted to know exactly what I was doing when I said I was planning to volunteer at first because I had rental income. They wanted to know with who. They wanted a letter from the person I was going to volunteer with. So it was stressful, but we got through it. And you have to go with your kids. So my toddler was like sliding off the chairs and, being a handful. But luckily, one thing I really love about Mexican culture is they're very child loving, very family oriented. So people never like sigh or glare if your kid is making noise. She was pretty blonde, so they have a special fascination with blondies or blue eyes. So, they would like pat her in the head and smile. But even if you have a child of other complexion or hair color, they just are universally child loving, which was so nice. So in terms of like, one thing, I don't know if Tania touched on this. I don't think so. I wanted to talk about specifically because people often ask, like, how is it for your kids moving there? Because I think my daughter, my older one, was older than Zenin when you guys moved, Tania. I think she was turning 7. It was a harder adjustment for her. It took about 6 months for her to really open up to it. And it's very common for kids in language immersion to not talk in the other language for 6 to 12 months. That there's kind of a process where in the beginning they just are quiet and the language is washing over them. And then over time, maybe after about 6 months, they start using some words and phrases, and then they, gradually speak more and more. But I hear sometimes people think that like, oh, I'll just visit Mexico for 2 weeks every year and like my child will be bilingual, and it definitely takes longer. But now both of my kids speak beautifully, and I have acquired another who is totally 100% bilingual, bicultural. It's been interesting for us. So in San Miguel, there's a large, as I mentioned, American and Canadian population. A lot of those are snowbirds, so not necessarily relevant to all of you guys. There are a lot of American families here. So it is easy to get by at school and in your daily lives in some ways without speaking Spanish. I studied Spanish in school, so I had quite a bit before we moved, but my kids didn't. My 3-year-old picked up Spanish very quickly. But now I met someone down here in Mexico, so I have a Mexican partner. We speak almost exclusively Spanish together. He can understand a lot now, having lived with us. And my older daughter only speaks to him in English, and he answers in Spanish, and they understand each other perfectly. But that's been really, it was not expected for me at all. People told me, oh, you're going to meet someone down there. And I was like, nope, that ship has sailed. That chapter of my life is over. So it's been lovely and also really interesting because I get a different perspective on Mexican families, because normally people don't necessarily invite you into their homes as family. Like, they're friendly, they're nice. But if you guys imagine, like, if a Mexican family moved to your community, you wouldn't necessarily be like, come over, join us for Thanksgiving. You know, it's just, they're different cultures, not because anybody's mean, but because of having a Mexican partner, I've gotten to be a part of a Mexican family, which has been really fun. So I've been to some weddings and birthday celebrations, and as well as like birthday parties for kids. Those you can get easily invited to. And it's so funny. The first time we got there, like an hour late, I was like, I'm so sorry I'm late. And we were the first ones there. We left at like 6:30 and they were just firing up the grill, like, and the whole family's there, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, as well as like all the children. So it's very, very family oriented. So it's been really beautiful getting to have a window into that. Additionally, I don't know if this is relevant for any of you guys. I did, as I mentioned, have a baby here. And so a lot of people have asked me about that. I had a fantastic experience. The hospital was great, as Tania mentioned. Yeah, they're not big on narcotics. And so I actually had another surgery. And by the time I woke up, they had already removed the anesthesia. And I was like, what the heck? Like, in the US, you would definitely have more support. And like after a C-section, I was out in less than 48 hours, which I think in the States, you would stay longer. But the care is lovely. As a healthcare provider, I would say that they are behind the United States in terms of medical knowledge. But most of the time, that's not really an issue. But just something to be aware of. Like, for me, I'm very critical because I am an insider. But the quality of care and the level of attentiveness, like, your doctor will give you their WhatsApp number. If you have questions, you can message them. Like, you have much more access than in the States, which is really nice. Another thing people have asked me about is, I like Oaxaca. San Miguel is very queer friendly, very open to alternative families. One of my kids was gender nonconforming for a while, and nobody said anything about it. So my daughter, had very short hair, dressed like a boy, but had earrings. So, on both ears. And so people would kind of look a little puzzled, but again, then they would like pat her head and smile. And so it was just like, they love children, they love people, they love community. So there's actually a lot of gay weddings here in San Miguel, and I think in Oaxaca as well. It's a big destination for weddings, and yeah, you'll find a lot of queer people here. Let's see. San Miguel is also really popular for visitors for Spanish classes. A lot of people come here for that. There's a very famous writers retreat every February that people often come for. More the I would say retired age folks, but it's President's Day week is always packed. Here, I saw someone asked about their home, and that was actually something I had on my list. So I rented out my apartment in New York when I moved here, and I got a storage locker. I did give away or sell a lot of things, but I didn't, my furniture, I didn't know if I would be back. So I said, let me see, 2 years max, and then I'm going to decide. And then a year and a half in, COVID started. So I definitely didn't want to go back to New York as a healthcare provider, given that it was one of the epicenters for COVID. So I sold my apartment, and I had my babysitter clean out my former babysitter clean out my storage unit, since we couldn't easily travel back to the States. But I do think that makes a lot of sense, because it's really hard to imagine what it's going to be like to live in another country, without having done it. And if you change environments like I did from a very big city, international city, to a small city, and very different, climates, and it's hard to imagine. So it worked well for me. It was not without its complications, especially because of COVID. But let's see, a couple other things that were different for me versus Tania. We do have fairly regular power outages. But I think some of that is because my house is wired now. My main house is wired for air conditioning. So it has 220 volts of electricity versus our casita upstairs is 120. So most of the time our casita does not lose power. And so that's, just a fun little adventure. I haven't had internet issues in a very long time. But my phone is my hotspot in case we lose power. I now own my home. I rented for a few years. And so when I bought the house, we put in a whole house filter system in addition to UV for the kitchen. So you can drink from any faucet in my house without a problem, which is nice because in rental houses, we did have those giant garrafones, which are fine, but a little bit, if you need like 5 or 6 of them sitting in your entryway every day, it's a little bit cluttery, but it's not hard. The locals do not drink the unfiltered water either. So I see a lot of posts of like, is it safe to drink, ice cubes in your water? Is it okay to eat the fruits and vegetables? Like, yes, because it's not like an American versus Mexican thing. Everybody drinks filtered water. Everybody cleans their fruit and vegetables. Not everybody in the same way. Like some Americans I know just use white vinegar. We use a disinfectant that I think most Mexicans use. And I actually have never had a GI issue. Apart from my first month, things were a little sensitive, but nothing major until I went back to the States for the first time. And then I got, Montezuma's Revenge American version, which was terrible. But, and let's see, housing is definitely more expensive here in San Miguel versus Oaxaca because it is so popular here with foreigners. I don't use the word expats because that has, that's the word I'm looking for. Tania, maybe you can help me out. Just like basically it implies that like I'm at a higher status than immigrants.
It's like, it's like white privilege, isn't it? Because if we say that everyone's an immigrant that has brown skin, right? But that we're expats. So I try and say immigrant more because I just think it's obnoxious a little bit when you see people sort of using it as a way of like separating themselves from others. Yeah. I also realized that I didn't touch on the most asked question, which is a big eye roll, I think, from both of us, is about safety. Because, without getting into a big rant, but one of the reasons I left the US was for safety. I wanted to put my children in school and not worried that they might not come home. And I realized that I am a person that is really happy to move. I really do love change. And so and I also like have a mom that is just like me. And so when I was like, should we move to Mexico? She was like, when? Let's go. So neither of us hold on to things very much. And much as I miss my community in Rhode Island, I'm so lucky that I have built a worldwide community. And like I would, if I had not moved here, like there are many faces on this call that I would never know. So I feel like, so as far as safety goes, in order to be affected by cartels, you have to be doing something with drugs, right? You're not just going to randomly. I kind of think maybe it's like mafia of like, if you never worry about going to Italy because of the mafia, right? Because you know that you're not going to like get involved with the mafia, and it's the same here. And even what happened a couple of weeks ago, like the people who died, I think there was one civilian casualty, right? But the people who died were all people that were around the cartel leader and all of the people who were trying to catch him. And he literally had an army around him. So obviously that's a lot of casualties. But it wasn't civilians. And they actually were asking people to like leave the bus, and they were letting them take their suitcases. Like I will take being in something like that than I would a school shooting or a target shooting or whatever. And I like no disrespect for people who are still there. And I know because I lived that life. And when I had my son, I remember being in Target and looking for the exits. And one of the reasons that really pushed me to move here was I went to Merida for Day of the Dead. And I was I got into a really cool position. I was in a cemetery. And then all of a sudden I was like, shit, I can't get out. If somebody drives through the car with the crowd with a car, like I'm against the cemetery gates. And and like I don't want to be around. And then I was like, oh wait, you're not in the US anymore. And I like my heart was racing because I was away from my child for a couple of hours, and suddenly all of these scenarios. And then I was like, wait, you're in Mexico. That doesn't happen here. And I realized how much of that like energy I stored on my day to day, and realized how much safer I was, not just felt, and how random stuff like that isn't a daily occurrence here. And even more so now, seeing what happened in Puerto Vallarta and seeing how many people that I follow or I know up there are like back to business the next day. And they're, of course, people whose shops were damaged, all of that, like those people are suffering, but it seems like the community rallies and supports. And today, I don't know if this happens in San Miguel, but this weekend is International Women's Day. And we always have, it's like the one day of the year where we don't go into town because it gets a little testy down there, and they break a lot of windows of corporations and stuff. But it's like
they always announce before.
Yeah.
What is happening.
So it's like, we'll know. We don't. There's not. It's not a random thing. Like you can go in the march, like plenty of people. But as a foreigner, we're not supposed to participate in anything against the government. So we don't go for that. But I mean, I've got plenty of friends who take their children, and it's fine. But at some point during the night, stuff gets a little bit testy. But you're still not going to be in any danger to you. That's like the only time of year where I'm like, oh, I just won't go to town today. That's it. So for safety, I feel and am, not just feel, so much safer here from random crap that will happen. Cars won't stop. If you're crossing the street, they're not going to stop for you. So that's like something which we had a casualty here last 2 weeks ago because of that. But it's just like common sense stuff that I have done my whole life. Wherever I've been, when I'm in a city, is the same way I live my life here, just with less risk. And it's so crazy. But yeah, it does, we know the propaganda that the Western media put onto Mexico. But I think that now people are sort of more aware of that a lot of it is propaganda, and stuff happens. I mean, stuff happens all over the world all of the time. And here I just feel so much better. So I don't know what you feel.
Yeah, I mean, cars here do stop for pedestrians, perhaps because all the streets are cobblestone and there's a million topers, which are like speed bumps, rather than traffic lights are almost non-existent because it's, I don't know, an older city. So everywhere there's a tope, a speed bump, that's a crosswalk. So because the cars have to slow down. And I've never heard of, property damage like during International Women's Day. A few years ago, I was peripherally involved in a dance mob, flash mob dance for International Women's Day, which was fun. So yeah, and I just noticed, so every year before spring break, the beginning of March, the U.S. issues a travel advisory against Mexico, and it is entirely economic. They don't want to lose spring break travelers to Mexico, so they publish it every year. I had actually heard 0 casualties in Puerto Vallarta, but regardless, yes, the cartel literally says, we are going to set this on fire. We suggest that you get out of your car now. And it is purely, it was not aimed at civilians, tourists, Americans, Canadians. As long as you stay out of the sketchy areas, you're totally fine. Just like if you went to New York or Chicago or New Orleans, you would not go to those sketchy parts of town where sketchy things are going down. So I feel much, much safer here. I was always aware in New York that the New York City subway system is incredibly vulnerable to bioterrorism. So that always made me nervous. Also, another thing, guns are not prevalent here. The cartel has guns that they get from the United States. That's it. Like, people don't have guns. So I feel much, much safer here.
Yeah, I also see that there's questions here about Mexico versus Spain. I have lived in Spain, but it was so long ago that I don't know that my experience is that relevant. And also you're mentioning about the high humidity. So we don't really, I think our climates are very similar in San Miguel and Oaxaca, that we don't have high humidity. We actually, our hottest time of year is pretty much like starts next month for 2 months. Last year in Oaxaca, it actually wasn't hot at all that period of time. It's hot for about 2 hours a day, right? And then it's fine. And it's not hot unbearable. We don't use air conditioning here. Most of the houses are built to maximize through breezes. So yes, I think But as to Mexico versus Spain, obviously, yes, you do have Europe. But I think they're so different. I think I would have to revisit Spain and spend some time there, and then wherever you feel like more drawn to in Mexico, and then just see what both has to offer. Obviously, culturally, they're really different because it's more European in Spain. But since I've lived there, they joined the euro, and they really suffered. They've really suffered, and I think they're economically suffering right now as well. And so I don't know. Right now, obviously, I think I would go Mexico just because I would prefer to be out of Europe at this point in history. But I think, I would definitely revisit at both places and then just see which one appeals to you more. It's definitely more expensive, I think, in terms of economically in Spain. Megan, yeah.
Also, it really is going to impact your work if you work with people in the United States or Canada and you're living in Europe. So for me, that was a non-starter. I would have considered other countries in Central America or South America before Europe, even though I would love to go back to Europe to visit.
Yeah, and both areas walkable, or do you need to own a car to drive? So Oaxaca Central is totally walkable. I know plenty of people that exist without cars here, but I am way too what's the word? Like, I have too much of an adventurous spirit to not have a car. I can't imagine like not waking up in the morning and deciding I can't go to the mountains because I don't have a car. So I'm really spontaneous, and so for me that's like it's a non-option. I could exist without a car, absolutely. Taxis are accessible.
Buses.
But yeah, buses, there's a good bus service here. So I don't take it very often, just maybe into town every so often. But yeah, so you can, and then you could easily exist without a car, but it's just, still you've got to lug stuff from the supermarket to the taxi or whatever, and wait for a taxi. I used to go to a Bastos without a car, and it was harder. It was definitely a lot harder.
I didn't have a car in my first year, and it was fine, but what I found was with kids and like kids going to kid activities, you need a taxi to get to Taekwondo and another taxi to get home from Taekwondo. And then there's rock climbing class and there's school, if you need to live walking distance, like that's totally fine. But in my first year, my kids took a school like big shuttle bus, but over time, I do like the freedom of having a car rather. But because I came from New York, I did have a car there, but I didn't use it much. I was totally fine not having one, and it was fun. I walked like 5 kilometers a day, not even as exercise, just as like, oh, I'm going here to do this thing and this, going here to do that. So it was great. You could totally walk here, but I think if you're here long term, you probably want a car, just again for two reasons. If you don't have a young child, Megan, you asked a question about the schools. Yeah. You might not need it. If you were coming here, like you're semi-retired or, working online and you don't have young children, but I assume most of you do. My kids go to private school, like Tanya's. Actually, one of them now homeschools. She goes to an online homeschool in the US, but she has a Spanish tutor here that she walks to twice a week. She goes to a sculpture class that's for adults. She's 14. In this old factory that was turned into like a lot of art studios. So she goes there. So both of those are, totally Spanish. They both do Taekwondo. So she is engaged, but she goes to an American school. And then my other one, Amelie, goes to a Waldorf school that she's been at for 6 years now, which is primarily Spanish, but a lot of American kids. So she does English on the playground.
The school has some kids from
but the kids are Mexican and Spanish speaking. So, but the cost for my daughter's school is about 6,000 pesos, which is, I don't know, $350.
And Adriana said that local schools will accept foreign children. No problem.
Yes, and there is a school in every.
Yeah, and there's public schools in every area. But she said that there isn't a problem for them accepting international or foreign kids if you wanted to put your kids in a foreign school. I think that what I've heard about the public schools is that it's more like rote learning and repetition. It's not the level of education that we're more used to. So that's why I think both Abby and I chose to put our children in schools that were alternative. It's because it's the public schools are just not I wasn't interested in them anyway. And someone's asked, what online school is your?
It's called Mia Prep, and now because she's going to be starting high school in the fall, it's Mia Prep Online High School, which is has like more teacher engagement. The Mia Prep itself, if you don't want or need that higher level engagement, is like I think $48 a month, so super affordable.
Oh wow, that's really good. And I know, Megan, you're asking about retirement plans. I think the best thing would be to speak to a financial advisor about that stuff, because I have no idea about what to do with that kind of stuff, because I didn't have a retirement and still don't. And how
Actually, I want to say
income in.
something about that.
Okay.
A lot of the like investment firms in the US don't let you live in another country full time. So Charles Schwab is a bank that you can have money invested and live internationally, and they're known for having the ATM card that refunds any fees for using international ATMs. So definitely check them out. But some of the others, you do not want to communicate to them that you'll be living abroad more than 6 months of the year.
Yeah, the Schwab card is like a must-have. I feel like that's my favorite, one of my favorite travel cards. What is there? And then bringing income in for your family. I've met people that have done so many different things. From like, I met a lady that's literally, she's just working in a call center for like 15 hours a week because she said it pays her like $18 an hour and she can survive on that. So I have met a lot of people who have online jobs, or therapists. There's a lot of like people that do like therapy work. Trying to think what else. Like tech, I guess people who work in tech, they can work remotely. I feel like you wouldn't obviously want to get a job, even though we're permanent residents now. I mean, I wouldn't work for a company here because they don't pay as much as what we would get in the US. And I know that it's like sucky, but if you're Mexican, sorry, to the money that they would pay somebody here if it was a corporation versus what they would pay for that same job is so much less because they can get away with it. So I think most people I know that are living here are doing something where all of their income is generated from overseas, whether that's Australia, the US, Canada. Just makes, I mean, even obviously what I do is like, I've never had a guest from Mexico. Everyone is from the US, UK, Canada, Australia. So you've got to keep you're paying people. And especially if you're on a temporary visa, you can't accept any money from Mexicans.
Yeah, it's hard to work here. I do know someone who started a business down here, but generally speaking, you need permission from the government to work in Mexico because you would be taking jobs from Mexicans in the same way that if Mexicans visit the US, they can't just work there. So, and the wages are much lower. And like, for example, for me as a nurse practitioner, like they don't have nurse practitioners here, and nurses have much less responsibility in Mexico versus the US. They're more like the doctors, helper. They're not independent providers. Even like a registered nurse in the US has way more autonomy and independence than here. So conditions are worse. The hours are longer. They generally work 5 10-hour days and then a half day on Saturday versus, an American 40-hour week.
And when you were saying about the language, so Adriana and my kids went to school together. And when my son first went to school, like he was 5, and like Abby said, they don't want to speak the language. There's like almost like a self-consciousness while they're absorbing. And Zenon would say to me, oh, I don't need to speak Spanish because I speak the real language. And I was like, oh, okay, if that's how you feel, then that's great, because then we only have to go to 3 birthday parties because there's only 3 English-speaking kids in your school. So that works for me. Sweet, don't get any friends. And then about 3 months later, he said, oh, can I have my friend Adrienne come over? And it's her son. And I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know how this is going to go, because like, I do speak Spanish, but like kid Spanish sometimes, like it's harder to gauge because they're only 5, right? And I'm driving them home from school and they're singing to each other, like taunting funny songs in Spanish. And I'd never heard my kid speak Spanish. And then he's like, making up words to a song. I videoed it. So you just like never know when they're going to start to absorb language. And I was like, oh, I guess if Adrian needs anything, he can just start saying it, because apparently he speaks Spanish now. So I had no idea. So they just all of a sudden they speak Spanish. It's crazy.
Yvette asked about, I think it was Yvette says about having a middle schooler. I think the older your child is, the harder the adjustment will be, because I used to work with adolescents a lot as a nurse practitioner. And developmentally, adolescents, their peer group is incredibly important. And so leaving not just their friends, but their culture, their school. Like my kids went from my oldest, from a public school in Brooklyn, also with a lot of Jewish kids, which has become important to her Judaism, to Mexican, Waldorf, Spanish speaking, totally different school system. It's hard. And I think you have to be prepared that your kid's probably going to have a big reaction. They might be really mad at you for a while. My daughter was. But it was interesting as a single parent, she doesn't have anyone to talk to about this. So I finally got her a therapist. And literally after one session, she came home and she's talking up a storm, whereas she had been silent before that, hanging out in her room all day. And I think it's kind of like, for those of you, I don't know if you're a single mom by choice or not, it's a decision that we make for our kids. And it's hard to be a kid and have this big decision made for you. Do I think it's ultimately been beneficial? 100%. Like now my daughter's so glad that we did this. And I do think, but it's interesting, it will shape her much more than me being a single mom by choice will. And of course we all worry about, those of us who are SMCs here, about how that decision will affect our kids. But that one has been like no big deal for my kids. But this reminds me, I wanted to mention like the idea of third culture kids. Kids who leave the US and move to another country they're not going to become Mexican if they move here. They're not even going to really be bicultural. They're going to be third culture, which is Americans who've left the United States and living in this other place. And that was a really unique experience and has a lot of benefits, but it's challenging too. And yeah, so they're not going to be 100% American. They're not going to be 100% Mexican. They're this other thing, which I think has been great for my kids, but has challenges for sure.
Yeah, my kids, when you ask them where they're from, they're definitely like, okay, I was born in the US, but I live in Mexico. And then if you ask them what do you feel you are, they say they feel Mexican, which is really interesting to me. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, somebody asked at Etienne today, and she said she feels Mexican. Our tax is complicated, Kelly. I pay an accountant because even in the US, taxes would really scare me. I'm like number phobic. So, and it's also, I think it's like, no one ever wants to get in trouble with the IRS. So I just pay somebody to do my taxes. And especially as being a business owner, and it's not something that I have ever learned how to do, and I'm like learning everything on the fly. I don't want to learn how to do taxes on the fly. So I just pay somebody, and then it's not that hard then, because I just give her all of the information, and then I put my fingers in my ears, and then she tells me what to do. So, and
there's something called the foreign income exclusion, where if you live more than 6 months of the year out of the United States, you pay like 50% taxes and you don't pay state tax. So you are supposed to pay taxes in Mexico.
Yeah.
And Rachel, I saw your question about special needs. One of my kids does have ADHD. They do have ADHD medications here, but many, many fewer options. So some families I know choose to go back to the US to get medications. There are many fewer accommodations here than in the United States in terms of special needs. But obviously there are children here with special needs, adults with special needs. So it can happen, but they are behind the times compared to the US.
Yeah. Yvette, yeah, I have retreats all the time. I have a retreat arriving tomorrow, and I have retreats for the next 3 weeks, and I'm doing a bunch of international ones. So yeah, I always have retreats. I have a casa year round. Adriana helps me with marketing, and because I just am one person doing everything, and I finally was like, I need help because I can't do it all, and so Adriana helps me. But yeah, I always have, and when I'm away, Adriana runs the retreats for me, and so yes, always have retreats. Obviously, it's been a little bit tougher with the Mexico nonsense that happened a couple of weeks ago. Okay, Megan. Well, I'm going to see you soon, Megan. Megan's actually coming on a retreat. Miguel has been on five now. Kelly's been with me. So yeah, there's lots of people here who've been with me.
Amazing. I don't host retreats, but I do have a casita above my house that I host guests in.
I've stayed in.
And yeah, so a lot of SMCs come and stay there. It's totally private, but close because it's the second floor of my house. So if anyone is interested, San Miguel and Oaxaca, as Tania had said, like they have similar climates, but they're very different in character. So I definitely think they are worthy of separate visits.
Yes, yeah, for sure. They're very different. I think Oaxaca's a lot more. It's harder to live here for sure. I think it's far from anywhere, so you have to like love Oaxaca to commit to being here, because the closest big town is a 4.5 hour drive away. The beach is only 2.5 to 3 hours drive away now, but there is Mexico City is like 7 or 8 hours drive, or a 38-minute flight. So that's pretty accessible, but yeah, you have to commit to it. Whereas in San Miguel, like when I've been there a couple of times, I'm like, oh my God, it's just like you have everything you could possibly need. And there's so much more around you than there is here. And it's more, there's a little bit more familiarity, like even in the grocery stores, there's more stuff that you're used to seeing elsewhere. Okay, 1 minute. So yeah, I do think like Oaxaca is definitely like, I don't know, it's harder living for sure, but I like that about it. But I think that if I was to have landed straight here, I probably would have got more culture shock. For living, for visiting, you don't see it, but when you're living here, it's definitely a little harder.
Yeah, San Miguel it's a small city, but we're close to Querétaro, which is quite a big city, about an hour and a half from there, depending on which part. And they have Costco, they have Sam's, they have Walmart, they have Home Depot, they have like all those stores, they have malls. And then Mexico City is about 4 hours. And Mexico City, by the way, I've never lived there, is another really wonderful place to visit.
Love it.
So much culture. They have pyramids right in the middle of the city, and pre-Hispanic stuff. And I always thought it was like this dirty, crime-ridden place, but actually it's beautiful. It's like Rome or New York, a world-class city. And amazing weather. It's hot here in the spring, but Mexico City is generally like in the 60s and shady. Of course, they do have earthquakes, so every place has their pluses and minuses. But another place I highly recommend checking out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it there.
Allergies? What are allergies like there? In either Oaxaca or San Miguel?
Well, I would say the environmental stuff. It depends on what you're allergic to, of course.
Trees,
it's very
pollen,
dusty here.
dust. My daughter's allergic to all that.
So dusty, it is dusty in the spring because we have a rainy season, and outside of that, it's going to be dusty. Right now is our dusty season, but we weirdly had in San Miguel a huge rainstorm yesterday. My partner was in Querétaro, an hour away, and there was nothing there, but we had like thunder, lightning. I don't think mold is an issue here because it is so dry. Food allergies are very rare here. The only people I've known with food allergies are people who were not born here. So if your child has like nut allergies, egg, wheat, soy, anything like that, again, as a medical provider, or asthma, like there's much less awareness of that here. They do not have sun butter in the schools. Like everybody's eating all the things.
Yeah, that's not something that I'm really super clicked into because my kids don't have any allergies, but I do know that at this time of year, like we all have coughs because it's so dry. And that's like, one of the things about having a wet season and a dry season. But we also had a rainstorm a couple of nights ago, which is kind of weird, but it is, but people are like, if you tell them, obviously I run retreats, and so I have a chef, and so we've had all sorts of allergies come in, and it's never a problem, but it's obviously because she has me telling her like this is really serious, like we don't ever, and so if there's a nut allergy, there's no peanut butter even in the house, and so we're really conscientious. But when they go out and about in the streets, I have a regular guest that comes with me to Southeast Asia, and she has severe nut allergy, and that's definitely a huge challenge in Southeast Asia, but But here it's, I feel like Mexico's a little easier. But gluten allergies are so easy because everything's corn. So that one we deal with.
Tortillas, they do put like a spoonful of flour in. So
Okay,
you would want to double check. Like if
Yeah.
you go for tacos, but like in our stores here, La Comer and City Market, they have tons of imported stuff. So you could get gluten-free everything if you wanted. Dairy-free. Kosher is also available. There's an Orthodox Jewish family here, so you can get everything.
Yeah, I don't know if we have like kosher or halal in Oaxaca. It's one thing that I want to look into, but I don't know that we have either. So you can find a nice place to live for 500-ish a month. Yeah, you can, right? For like 10,000 pesos, you can find a place to live.
Yes.
Yeah, I just sent one to Megan yesterday that was 8,000, 2-bedroom in Centro. Yeah, I know.
Not here, not in San Miguel, at least not in the
No.
areas where foreigners tend to live.
I've never paid that little, but I also am always looking for 3 bedrooms, outdoor space because I have pets, you know, so I also am a little bit more high maintenance then.
I think the cheaper with 2 bedrooms is like $300.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
so Adriana's just told me that you can get the cheapest that she's like aware of, but you obviously would have to be renting from a local, is about $300. So.
Yes.
But you'd have to get her to find you that because I couldn't.
Yeah, you're not going to find those on like the equivalent of Craigslist. Like you have to go
know
to
someone.
Mexican channels to find the cheaper ones, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah. And I don't know if Abby's tuned into what the average is in San Miguel either, because you haven't rented for a really long time, right? So
Yeah, I think when I first moved here, I paid $1,200 for a 3-bedroom, but it was through a Canadian who did it online. So I'm sure that was inflated, but that was 7 years ago also. So
yeah,
it's gone up, but it also depends. Do you want a gated community? Do you want a pool? Do you want like,
yeah,
if you live in a gated community, they're going to have security, pool, gardeners, everything, but you're going to pay more versus like, I know I did for a little while during COVID, live in a gated community after we had a couple break-ins, but now we live in a different neighborhood, which is not so targeted and we don't have a gated community. So I wouldn't pay those kind of prices for rental.
yeah. Do we have any more questions before we say goodbye? Because we're trying to keep it to an hour because I've got to do the school run soon. Are we good? I think.
I have a question for you, Tanya, and we could maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think was the hardest thing for you about moving to Mexico?
Well, for me, because we moved on January 1st, 2020. So I thought that I had like, oh yeah, nailed it. This is so great. And then of course the pandemic hit. And so for me, it was like I hadn't had time to build a community. And then the community that I had built was way more comfortable with huge social events than me. So for me, like I was super isolated with a tiny baby and really like one friend. So for me, that was like a struggle. And so I really hated Merida. It was so hot. We couldn't really go out. And even when we did, it was like 7 a.m. till 9, and then we would have to be in because it was too hot. And then again, like in the evening. So yeah, that was a real struggle. I feel like my life didn't really begin until I came to Oaxaca. So we had a rough year and a half. But I never wanted to go back though. Even though it was hard, I never wanted to go back. How about you?
I think for me, it was leaving my community behind. I had a really tight community with 2 families that we saw every single day in Brooklyn. And I had been working in the same school for many, many years, and it was lonely moving here with a friend. It was hard. And yeah, I think like I really click with like neurotic Jewish types, and those that do not abound in San Miguel. So it's been lonely at times. My first year here, we actually had an SMC community with 6 moms, and we would go out every Saturday night. So that was amazing, but that no longer here.
I haven't been to the US for 2 years, but I was going back every year, but I, for various reasons, decided to skip it for a while, but I do miss my community. I had a lovely SMC community of all different kinds of people in Rhode Island, and Abby, you go back more than me.
Yeah, we usually go at least every summer for the kids to go to camp. My daughter goes to a boy camp that I used to go to as well, a Quaker camp. So I feel really strongly that I want to keep that for her or for them. And last year we went back for Thanksgiving. I do miss my my family. So some members of my family I'm pretty close with, and I did get to see them a lot more before.
Yeah, and Mindy, yeah, well, my mom moved with me, so I have a very small family, so I'm really lucky that my mom moved with me, and she wouldn't miss the kids growing up, and so it wasn't hard to persuade her. Like I say, she has that like adventurous soul like me. So, but yeah, it definitely is hard leaving communities. Even though I came with my mom, I still like miss those intense friendships that I had fostered for 20 years. But I still keep in touch with plenty of them, and it's so much easier to keep in touch now than it was when I left the UK 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And for folks who have older parents, Mexico is really well set up for elder care. Nursing homes, it's much more affordable. It's just a very loving culture. My parents are gone, but if I had a living parent, I would very much encourage them to come also.
Thank you so much for agreeing to co-host with me, Abby. I'm sure it's been so helpful for everyone to hear the two perspectives at opposite ends, almost. Well, we're both kind of left of center and right of center of the country. But and hopefully I'll get to come up and visit you soon.
That would be great. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.